Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank Rabbi Leiter for that very nice words of introduction. It's one thing to come and speak somewhere once. It's a whole nother thing to come and speak somewhere twice. And it's a whole third thing to speak somewhere 2 years in a row. It's a whole nother thing. So it's a great honor and a privilege and a pleasure. And I want to wish you a very warm and freilich and Chanukah to you all. And I'd like to share with you all a perspective, which I think is a little fresh, and I think it's a little unique, and I think it can potentially, maybe radically, change the way you think of the Jewish people, and you think of mitzvos, and you think of Judaism, and maybe the way you think of yourself. And I'm going to try to remain as politically correct as possible, but no guarantees, so buckle up. I want to begin with a story. When I was a kid, I lived in Rochester, New York. And I used to play basketball in the local JCC. A JCC is a Jewish community center. It's mostly a community center. It's also like a drop Jewish. And I would play basketball there on Sundays. So one day, I'm playing basketball there, minding my own business, and a group of around 5 or 6 non-Jewish, 19-year-old, big, muscular guys go on the other side of the court and start playing ball. No big deal. Very welcoming place. I'm not bothering them. They're not bothering me. I'm on my side of the court. They're on their side of the court. Great. After around 5 minutes, I hear from the corner of my ear, one of them call out, "Yo, D-boy, get out of here!" So I just figured I must have misheard, even though it was pretty loud. So I ignored him. But then I heard a little louder, 3 minutes later, again, "D-boy, get out of here!" So I think to myself, like, I am as welcome here as you are. I might even be more welcome here than you are, being the JCC. So I stayed. 5 minutes after that, I don't just hear from the corner of my ear, but I see right in front of my face, this guy is saying, "D-boy, you better get out of here before I make you get out of here." So I did a quick, mental calculation that my 4'7" body and his 6'4" body wasn't exactly a good match according to the laws of physics, so I left. But I remember thinking to myself, as I'm leaving, what did he see in me that bothered him? Because I'm wearing a yarmulke? I wasn't bothering you. What did he see in me that bothered him? What did he see in me that I didn't even see myself? And then I began thinking a lot about all the people that hated us. Paro is trying to annihilate the entire Jewish people. What is wrong with you? There are plagues raining down on your country. You need slaves. You're the mightiest empire arguably ever. Just go get slaves somewhere else. Let us free. What's wrong with you? What did Paro see in us that bothered him? Amalek wants to attack us and annihilate us and kill us. We don't even have a land you could steal. We're a bunch of ex-prisoners in a desert. What is wrong with you? Because we eat gefilte fish? That's what bothers you? Because we make good cardiologists? What did they see in us that bothered them? What did Antiochus and Haman see in us that drove them mad, that we don't even see in ourselves? What did the Greeks and the Romans and the Crusaders and the Inquisitioners and the Bolsheviks and the Nazis see in us that bothered them? Random Jewish girls in the University of Nevada who happen to have a Magen David necklace get punched in the face for no reason whatsoever? What is wrong with you? Anti-Semitism is the single most unique form of hatred on earth. It is unique in 4 ways. Anti-Semitism is unique in its universality, it's unique in its longevity, it's unique in its intensity, and it's unique in its irrationality. It's unique in its longevity. When was the first time the Jewish people were hated? Like 10 seconds into our nationhood. When was the latest time the Jewish people were hated? Like right this second, there's probably someone in Israel getting stabbed in the foot. It's unique in its universality. Recently, I went to Japan. Why is Mein Kampf a bestseller in Japan? There are no Jews in Japan. From Sydney to Vancouver to Argentina, everyone hates the Jews. It's unique in its irrationality. You give me a reason for anti-Semitism, I'll find you a 400-year period of time where that reason doesn't apply, and yet there was still anti-Semitism. We started Marxism, communism, we're capitalism, socialism, we're too rich, we're too poor, we associate ourselves with society too much, we don't associate enough, we're involved in politics too much, we're not involved enough, we assimilate, we don't assimilate. Nothing makes sense. Anti-Semitism is unique in its irrationality. You're cramming Jewish babies into ovens? 1943, a German U-boat gets a call from an island off of Japan that we have a Jewish person, you want him, and they travel 1,000 miles to go pick up the person and shoot him in the head? 1,000 miles! What is wrong with you? What is the Jewish people's unique capability, unparalleled in history, to annoy anybody they come in contact with? I believe the answer is embedded in Chanukah. There's a very obvious question that you can ask about Chanukah, and that is, what is unique about Chanukah? So there was a bad guy, and he was attacking the Jewish people, and we did tshuva, and there was a miracle, we won. Isn't that like the entire Jewish history? You just open up a Tanakh, open up an Old Testament, and flip to any page, and it's bad guy, attacking Jews, do tshuva, miracle. Next page. Bad guy, attacking Jews, we do tshuva, miracle. Next page. Bad guy. That's the entire, if you want to encapsulate all of Jewish history, that is it. We don't celebrate, for example, the following list of, small list, I could go on and on. What about the walls of Jericho falling down? Victory over the Canaanim. We don't celebrate that. No mention of that. What about having a Yom Tiv for the victory over the evil Sisera with 900 chariots we beat with Devorah? We don't celebrate that. We don't have a holiday for that. What about Gideon beating the Midiani army who had 135,000 soldiers and we beat him with 300 soldiers? No mention. Most people don't know about that. What about celebrating Shimshon's victory over the Plishtim? What about that? What about celebrating Sancherib, who exiled 10 entire Shvatim and was on his way to Yerushalayim to flatten it? Jewish history would have been over with. And in the last minute, we do tshuva and a miracle happens and we're here. We don't celebrate that. What about David saving the entire Klal Yisrael by beating Goliath? What about that? What about the entire land of Israel almost being transferred to the Africans before Alexander the Great came and intervened and we won? It was a miracle we got it back. We don't even know of these things. What is unique about Chanukah? I believe the answer to this question unlocks sort of the secret of Chanukah and unlocks a little bit the secret of the Jewish people. Here's a story. So I used to do kiruv, I used to do Jewish outreach in a state-sponsored school where the acceptance policy was if you had a head, you can come into the school. So kiruv was a dream. Jewish outreach was a dream in such a place. Why? Because the kids' lives are largely dysfunctional and come from a lot of dysfunctional homes, and a lot of them are on drugs, and there's alcohol and a lot of dysfunctional relationships. So I would hold up a sign, we're having sushi and cholent, and we're learning the ancient Jewish wisdom, and you have 150 people show up. Then I transferred to Princeton University, and I began doing kiruv and doing research, outreach in Princeton University. Now, Princeton is unique. Princeton is one of the best universities in the world, with the top 1% of the top 1% there, and they're all rich, and a lot of them are brilliant, they're all driven, they're all mostly from functional homes. This guy's father's the CEO of Delta, his mother has a law firm. They are very uninterested in Judaism. I'm sitting there trying to get the attention of a guy who has Fortune 500 companies calling him and offering him executive positions at their company, and I'm sitting there with my toy chauffeur trying to get his attention. Okay, I want to give you an example. I offered him a free trip to Italy. Free! Paid for, airfare, transportation, luxurious accommodations. Guess how many people showed up? Signed up. All you got to do, learn a certain amount of hours of Jewish studies. 0. Italy, winter break, I've been there 10 times. I want to Bora Bora. Italy, what? I have an internship at the White House. What? Italy, what? I'm shadowing some member of the British Parliament. Who are you? What are you talking about? Okay, that's what I had to deal with. So I knew I had to come up with some form of class to pop these people's bubble. I had to say something which would sort of make them rethink their priorities. And I'd like to share with you just a small taste of what I told them. So I walk into the class after some slightly provocative advertising for my class, and there's a large number of students who showed up, and I asked the following question. I said, being that suicide is up 37% since the year 2000, I figured it would behoove us to explore perhaps the reasons why. I asked them a question, simple question. Which age do you think of people commit suicide the most? Right away. They said, oh, this is for sure. It's obviously teenagers, people in their young 20s, people who have dysfunctional relationships and struggling under financial stress. And I said, totally wrong. According to the CDC, it's 55 to 65-year-olds. Now, that's so strange, so counterintuitive. Like, shouldn't the people with life basically figured out at that point, hopefully, have the lowest levels of suicide? Then I turned to them and I said, okay, which ethnicity would you say? What group, what type have the lowest rates of suicide? They're like, for sure it's immigrants, janitors, people of color, people who are poor. I said, totally wrong. I said, compared to 4,907 Hispanic suicides that took place last year, and 1,379 Asian suicides, and 3,692 African American suicides, upper class, wealthy, white people have a staggering 36,681 suicides. Wealthy white Americans commit suicide close to 800% more than any other ethnic group. Isn't that so counterintuitive? I said. So strange. Shouldn't the people with the easiest time in this country who speak the language, who have the most money, have the lowest rates of suicide? Strange. Then I asked another question. I said, okay, which states in America would you think, have the highest rates of suicide? They're like, okay, this for sure we got it. It's for sure New Jersey, New York, and California, right? Like busy, stressful states with big, busy businesses, and Wall Street, and Hollywood Boulevard, and Rodeo Drive, and the New York Jets, right? Obviously that's, I'm like, totally wrong.
I think Scandinavia.
Right.
Scandinavia. No way in Sweden.
The states in America with the lowest rates of suicide. Wyoming with 32.3 suicides for every 100,000 people. Then came Montana, Alaska, New Mexico, South Dakota, and Colorado. What? So counterintuitive, so bizarre. Shouldn't the states with the most stress, you want to know the states with the least suicide? You ready for this? California, New York, New Jersey. What? Make any sense with the craziness we deal with in Wall Street and Broadway and what?
No, I disagree. I think California and New York, you got only illegal aliens and people are fear for their lives.
100%. 100%. Then I asked them the final question. Which month of the year would you say people commit suicide the most? So they're like, okay, this week for sure. Rabbi, we got this. It's obviously December. People cooped up, it's cold, there's no sunshine, it's snowing, it's raining, it's depressed. People are trying to figure out their semester, their work, they're hunkering down, they're trying to stay warm. I said totally wrong, look it up. The number one month of the year for suicide is the month of August. So counterintuitive, how do you explain it? August, the month with the most sunshine, and the most off days, and the most cruise ships, and the most summer days, has the most suicide? So I turned to them and I said the following. I said, every one of you comes into the world with a body and a soul. The body comes through the mother's stomach, it looks around, and it's instantly thrilled. It sees that the nurse is watching Netflix. Great. The OBGYN pulls up in a brand new BMW. Love it. Sees outside of the window, there's a barbecue going on. Love it. There's a liquor store. Love it. The soul comes through the mother's stomach, looks around, instantly confused. I left that place for this. I left that place for this. It's like, imagine you had a meeting in the top floor of the Empire State Building with a bunch of 55-year-old executives, and you come into the meeting, and everyone's sitting on the floor, crisscross applesauce, playing with toy trucks, eating squeezy yogurts. You'd be like, doesn't anyone have anything better to do with their time? Right? That's what you think. The soul is the same way. It looks around, it's confused. And it begins to develop a little teeny tiny ache in the soul. Little teeny tiny ache. But it grows, and it's thirsty, and it wants something real. But that little ache gets buried by the distractions of life. It gets sort of kicked down the road. The soul needs a degree of calmness, of mental tranquility to come to the forefront. People who are stressed, people who are busy with their lives, people who are just trying to make ends meet, people who don't speak the language, people who are just trying to navigate a crazy country do not have time for soul searching. There's no room in the schedule. But suddenly someone gets a little older, there's a little bit more money, and there's a little bit more financial freedom, and it's August, and there's a little bit more off days, and you live in a place, in a state where it's a little bit more laid back, like Alaska. Suddenly there's room for the soul to break free from the jail that it's been placed in and ask the million-dollar question of, why do I wake up in the morning? Why have I not been fed in 30 years? And for a lot of people, that question is too difficult to handle. So I turned to them and I said, all of you guys, these guys in Princeton I'm talking to, are chasing money and power and prestige. But are you prepared to feed your soul? There are two chemicals in the brain, I tell them, that are associated with happiness. One is called dopamine, one is called serotonin. Dopamine is short-term. Serotonin is long-term. Dopamine comes from things like ice cream and drugs and alcohol and name-brand clothing. Serotonin comes from things like graduating college and opening a non-profit organization and having a child and marrying off a child. Too much dopamine leads to a mental illness called psychosis. Too much serotonin leads to limitless, infinite happiness. I said, are you sure you're chasing serotonin and not just dopamine? I said, how will your money and your power and your prestige and your dopamine help you if you are one of the 47 million people every year who quit their jobs? How will your money and your power and your prestige help you if you're one of the 29% of adults diagnosed with clinical depression every year? How will your money and your power and your prestige help you if you're one of the 18% of adults who have severe anxiety? How will your money and your power and your prestige help you if you're one of the 51% of first marriages and 67% of second marriages which end in divorce? How will your money and your power and your prestige help you if you're one of the 41% of men and 39% of women who will get cancer? How will your money and your power and your prestige help you if you are one of the 71% of Americans who are unsatisfied with the amount of money they have, no matter how much money they actually have? How will your money and your power and your prestige help your soul, which is desperately pleading to be fed? So I look at all these students and I say, use this time well. Make sure in life you're chasing serotonin and not just dopamine. And I walk out of the room. We live lives where our souls desperately are looking to stop the ache. Much like before Google came along, the internet was a mess. It was a Jurassic Park. It was a jungle. Came along Google and created an algorithm enabling people to search for something online in a simplistic fashion. And before Amazon came along, buying something online, it was a Jurassic Park. It was a disaster. Came along Amazon and created an algorithm. Well, before the Torah came along, the world was sort of a mess. And not even sort of, a mess. People were desperately looking for a way to stop the ache in their soul. People started inventing all sorts of funny, silly ways to try to stop the ache, like bowing down to salamanders, or stars, or trees, or grass, or cow manure, or sacrificing your only child to the gods of the sun. In short, the world was a mess. And came along the Torah and created, not just an algorithm, created the algorithm. You want to know the way to live life? This is it. You want to know the way to stop the ache and live genuine happiness? This is it. There is, according to ancient Judaism, only one way to attain genuine happiness, and that is with a soul that is well fed. There is no other way. No person, place, or thing can give you happiness other than a soul. I'm talking about genuine happiness. Every single one of the 613 mitzvahs is for our benefit, even in this world, which is a radical concept when you think about it. Every single one of the 613 mitzvahs is our benefit, even in this world. When other religions talk about kingdom come and 71 virgins, which is now 72 virgins with inflation, we have not one explicit reference in the Torah of the next world. 0 times. Because it's also about this world. Because the Torah is here to give us lives and homes with the most light and the absolute best marriages and the best kids and the sweetest children. That's why the Torah is here. Hashem does not need our service to him. We're a bunch of ants. He created the world in the Torah for one reason and one reason only, to bestow goodness upon us. He does not need our service to him. He is perfect. He gave this set of rules, I don't like to call them rules, opportunities, 613 opportunities to live a functioning good life with homes that are bursting with serotonin and genuine happiness. Like the pasuk says, "Lishmor es mitzvahs Hashem ve'eschukei sev asher anechi mitzavcha hayom l'toiv lach." The entire purpose of the mitzvahs of the Torah are for our benefit. Following the Torah leads to homes with the single most light on earth. You know how many juvenile arrests there are in America every single year? 700,000. You know how many there are in Torah-observant homes? Virtually zero. You know how many drug overdose deaths there are in America every single year? 120,000. You know how many there are in Jewish homes? A millionth of that number. There are tens and tens and tens of thousands of gun-related deaths in homes in America every single year. You know how many there are in Torah-observant Jewish homes? Zero! The FBI has a list. The city with the most violent crimes, with a city with at least 100,000 people, the city with the most violent crimes per capita is Mobile, Alabama, believe it or not. Do you know the city with the fewest crimes? The city with at least 100,000 people with the fewest violent crimes? Lakewood, New Jersey, down the block. Oh, is that a coincidence? The highest concentration of Torah-observant Jews in North America also has the lowest violent crime rate? Of course it's not a coincidence. Listen to this quote from the New York Times. The New York Times did a research study where they tried to find the happiest people in America. And they thought it'd be kind of cool if we could study people's happiness and then make an article about it, and then people would, read the New York Times. The following is a direct quote from the New York Times. March 6, 2011, Week in Review, Section 1, page 3, for all the fact checkers in the room. The New York Times research staff called thousands of randomly selected adults each day and asked them about their emotional status, their work satisfaction, their eating habits, their illnesses, their stress levels, and other indicators of their quality of life. It's part of an effort to measure the components of the quote-unquote good life. The responses are plugged into a formula called the Gallup Healthways Wellbeing Index. And the results show, quote, the single happiest people in America are observant Jews. This shocked the whole world. You know what didn't shock? Us. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we have the Torah. Yeah, we have the blueprint to life. Yeah, we have souls that are well fed and nourished. Yeah, of course. So when the Egyptians and the Babylonians and the Greeks and the Romans and the Inquisitioners and the Cossacks and the Crusaders and the Bolsheviks and the Nazis and that random guy Nevada who's spraying swastikas on dorms, when they see a Jewish person, they don't just see a citizen of the world like every other citizen in the world who's endlessly, desperately trying to find a way to stop the ache in their soul. They see someone who's figured it out. They see someone with a soul on fire, with a soul well nourished and well fed. They see someone living life the way life is meant to be lived. There is no greater dagger into the soul of a person than seeing the sight of the soul of a Jew, the crown jewel of humanity. Listen to Adolf Hitler's own words. Quote, Robert Wistra's Hitler Apocalypse, page 122. Providence has ordained that I, Adolf Hitler, shall be the liberator of humanity. I am freeing man from the restraints of an intelligence that has taken charge, from the dirty and degrading self-mortifications of a false vision known as a conscience, and morality, and their demand of freedom and personal independence, which only few can bear. The Ten Commandments have lost their vitality. Conscience is a Jewish invention. It is a blemish like circumcision. Our enemies have hated us for one reason and one reason only. Because we have souls well-fed and well-nourished. Because we have homes bursting with light. Because we are living lives the way life was meant to be lived. And therefore we are indestructible. Because our happiness is not determined by any person, place, or thing. We don't need any other externalities for our happiness. It's innate. It's inborn. We can generate it ourselves. Now listen to this quote. I don't know if I read it last year, but I read it every day. This is a quote from a Polish reporter who wrote this living in Warsaw during the Warsaw Ghetto. Non-Jewish guy. This is the following quote. I found a crack in the Warsaw Ghetto wall the other day, and I stole a glance. I'd expect to see humans in their lowest state, riddled with hate and violence and abuse. I was expecting to look out at the poles outside the ghetto walls and see light, while inside I'd see darkness. What I saw shook me to the core. I stole a glance, and I saw light. I saw love. I saw virtually zero domestic abuse. I saw virtually zero domestic violence. I saw children loving their parents. I saw families holding on for dear life. I saw homes filled with holiness and purity. I saw the sanctity of their Sabbath and the joy of their Sukkot. I saw the purity of their Yom Kippur and the sheer happiness of their Purim. I saw people maintain their respect for human life in one of the most horrid places on the face of the earth. I walked away from the crack in the ghetto wall, back to the supposed brighter side of humanity, back to the streets of Warsaw, now rid of its Jews, back to the homes with not even half as much light as the Jews behind those walls, back to the domestic violence and abuse, back to the city where our utopian bliss has been promised to us by the Third Reich. I am not sure what genuine happiness looks like, but the Jews, from even behind the ghetto wall, seems to be a whole lot closer to it than we are. Hear that quote? I am not sure what genuine happiness looks like, but the Jews, from even behind the ghetto walls, seem to be a whole lot closer to it than we are. We are indestructible because our happiness is inborn. It's innate. It's in our soul. And that is why the Chanukah story is so unique. We've had many enemies attack us. The Egyptians didn't want us Egyptian, they wanted us dead. The Persians didn't want us to be Persian, they wanted us dead. The Amalekim did not want us to be Amaleki, they wanted us dead. The Greeks had a whole different plan. When other empires came to a city, they flattened the city and they killed everybody in it. The Greeks were shluchim. They were Lubavitch shluchim before Lubavitch shluchim were Lubavitch shluchim. They were spreading Hellenism. They were spreading Greek wisdom wherever they went. They came into a city. You know what they did to it? They didn't destroy the city. They paved the roads for you. They installed water systems. They didn't kill the noblemen. They married the noblemen to their daughters. They instantly upgraded the math, the science, the art, the philosophy of your city. We were not prepared for that. That's something that spoke to us. The Greeks were on a mission to find utopian bliss. And between me and you, they almost found it. Our entire Western society is built on the backs of the Greeks. Democrat, Republic are Greek concepts. The three arguably smartest and most impactful minds ever, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Greek men, who basically founded the concept of modern-day science. But they were missing one thing. There was one thing they could not conquer, and that was the ache in their soul. And while every other nationality got subsumed by the Greeks, there was one that didn't. Why wouldn't you get subsumed by the Greeks? What's the problem? Let them come in and instantly upgrade everything about our lives. But the Jews, on the other hand, had something that the Greeks didn't. They appeared to be genuinely happier than everyone else. And that bothered the Greeks. So instead of just going through the nice route, we're going to force Greek on you. I want a museum on every corner. I want a gym on every block. The Beis Medrash, right next to the Beis Medrash, I want the most attractive Greek women to sit there with barely any clothing on all day, so the Bachrim, the high school students, have to walk through them to get to the Beis Medrash. That's what I want. Any Jewish woman who gets married, by law, has to spend a week with a Greek man to taste what real men taste like. We were dropping like flies. The assimilation rate, according to historians, I don't care which historian you use, from Paul Johnson to Beryl Wine to Josephus, all the same. The assimilation rate in the Greek times was around 10 million people every 75 years. So if you do the math, the Greeks began the times of Athens and Sparta, which was around 490 BCE. The Chanukah story took place 134 BC. So if every 75 years, 10 million Jews are assimilating, that's 47 million Jewish people without one drop of Jewish blood being shed. One, not even one. 47 million Jews. Finished. Finito. 85% of Jews at that time assimilated. The only time in Jewish history that's comparable is America right now and Germany 1932. Interesting date, right? We were dropping like flies because suddenly our homes look so stale and old-fashioned and prehistoric and dinosauric and archaic. And their homes seem so lively and intelligent with algebra and trigonometry and all these things. One family stands up and gives essentially the same speech I gave in Princeton and said, my fellow Jews, you're chasing darkness in place of light. You're chasing your bodies instead of your soul. You're replacing homes bursting with love and joy and harmony and serenity and peace with homes of chaos and dopamine. And so we picked up a bunch of forks and a bunch of malnourished Kohanim fight, and miracles happen, and we take down the Greek army. We are celebrating on Chanukah the uniqueness of the Jewish soul, which at no point in history was as in peril as in the times of the Greeks. The entire holiday of Chanukah is encapsulated by a candle, signifying that what's important are spiritual pursuits that take place in your soul. And every couple of years, there's a major sporting event which takes over the whole world, basically. It's called the World Cup. The greatest, largest sporting event in the world. And what always fascinates me are the countries that seem to do really well. Countries like the Netherlands, or Senegal, or Croatia, or Morocco, or Panama, or tiny countries you can't find on a map. And I think to myself, America with 400 million people is losing to the Netherlands with 17 million people? Well, countries with every medical technology in the world, every technological advancement in the world are losing to Senegal, a third world country without running water? How do you explain such a thing? The answer is that America might like soccer. These countries live soccer. These countries eat and breathe and think and dream soccer. And not only that, their parents dream and think and believe and are obsessed with soccer. It flows through their veins, so they become unbelievably good at it. The Jewish people are obsessed with life. We do not settle for mediocrity. If I'm getting married, I want the best marriage. If I'm having kids, I want the best kids. If I'm having a home, I want the best home. And we have the Torah, which shows us the way. A major theme of Chanukah is doors. Very interestingly. The Rambam Nigeres Hashmad, page 9, says, you want to know the decree that broke the camel's back? There were lots of decrees that the Greeks came up with. Bizarre decrees. But there was one that broke the camel's back. And that was a decree that you cannot have a front door. It's just got to come off. Unscrew it. It's a little bizarre. They were decreed, we were getting raped, we were getting slaughtered, you had a bris milah, you were killed, and they hunted down the mother, and they killed the mother, and they hung her in Times Square, and they wrapped the baby around the neck of the mother. They were like, what? Another time you find this, bizarre. Ma'osur, the famous poem, right? Ma'osur Yeshuasi. We go through each and every exile, each and every enemy we faced, and we encapsulate our enemy in one line. And we do a pretty good job for 3 out of 4. We say, Chaye Merer B'Koshi, referring to the Egyptians. They bittered my life. It was horrible. Yeah, pretty good encapsulation. Uvan Maigesh V'Higlani, in reference to Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians. You know what they did to us? They exiled us. Kimat She'avarti, we were almost gone. Kirais Kaim Aspiration, Bikesh Agagi Ben Madassa. You know what Haman did? He wanted to slice off our necks. Pretty good translation. And then comes Greek. And what do we say? Yevanim nikbetzu alai, azayim mechashmanim. What they do? The Yevanim gathered around me. And you know what they did? Uframsu chemes migdalai. They poked a bunch of holes in our walls. They also killed a lot of people and threw people off of cliffs and chucked people off of mountains and skinned people alive and raped a lot of people. Look, they poked holes in our walls. That's the encapsulation. The answer is yes. Because the whole Yom Tov, the whole Chanukah is a celebration of I have a door, I have walls, I don't need your latest trend of dopamine for happiness. It's in my house, it's in my soul, I have the time truly tested version. I don't need your latest version of dopamine outside. I have a door, I know how to use it.
Oh, you also have Rabbi Light?
Rabbi Light is a door in the human form. Let me tell you a story. So recently I was in Japan. Really cool place. Very advanced. Tokyo, I was in Tokyo, Japan. And it's the largest city in the world with 41 million people in it. So obviously they have a very, very advanced train system in Japan. And I was going from the city of Tokyo to the city of Kyoto, Japan. 6.5 hour drive. But they have this train called the bullet train, which is one of the fastest trains in the world. It goes close to 400 miles an hour. Compare that to Amtrak, which goes 2 miles an hour. So we're on this train, whizzing by the Japanese countryside, and around 15 minutes before we get to where we need to go, the station in Kyoto, there's an old Japanese man who turns to me, and he says, in a broken English, if I were you, I would, get your stuff together now, because it doesn't stay at the station very long. So I said thank you, and then I said, I assumed it'd be in America, the train comes and stops at the station for 20 minutes, and people get a slice of pizza, and they get a Slurpee, whatever. So in Japan, everything's faster, so it'd be 7 minutes. It pulls into the station, and I see I made a big mistake. There are people who are lining up, and they're ready to jump off the train, and they got their little tote bags, and in the meantime, we have 19 gourmet drop bags. We got Bamba everywhere. We have two strollers. I'm like, we are not making this. We got to make this. We got to run. So I'm gathering my stuff. We got to get off this train. It's not like in America, you miss a stop, so the next stop is only 20 minutes away, and it's only 2 miles down the road. This is Japan, a train going 400 miles an hour. The next stop is in another country. So I run, I gather my stuff. We're looking, I can't find my son's shoe anywhere. One of his shoes. I can't find it. So I'm like, forget the shoe. We jump off the train. We get off the train, and I don't have a shoe for my son. And I need a shoe for my son. We're going hiking, there's snakes. I need a shoe. So now we have to find a shoe store. Now, this is not Lakewood, New Jersey, with a kid's shoe store every 15 feet. This is Japan. They don't have kids, and they don't wear shoes. So where am I finding a kid's shoe store? So I'm looking. There used to be, was there. We asked this guy, go here, go there. After 3 hours, I find a shoe store, and after paying 10,000 yen, I buy my kid a shoe. And I'm walking out of the store, and I'm thinking to myself, if I would have listened to that old Japanese man, and would have just spent 3 minutes getting myself together, I could have saved myself a whole lot of time, and I could have saved myself a whole lot of money. Life is a fast-paced bullet train. It could whiz by us. And we wake up and we're 55, 65, 75, and our soul says, hello, I haven't been fed in 60 years. If we take 4 minutes during Chanukah, when we pull into the station, it could save us such tremendous heartache down the road. I have a lot more to say, but I see the kids are here, so I'm going to select certain things. I'm not breaking news when I tell you that we live in a dopamine external world. There was an article recently in a major newspaper which said the following. A major crash occurred between a Lamborghini and a Rolls Royce. And this article goes on and on and on about how tragic it was that two vintage cars like this, would crash into each other. And it talks about how what a shame it is that they would have to spend so much time in the shop, and how rare and unusual it is that two cars of this caliber would be on the road at the same time, and how the collective value of these cars was an astronomical $2.3 million. And buried at the very bottom of the article is, by the way, 2 people died. Completely irrelevant, completely secondary. That is the world we live in. Okay, I'm going to say a bunch of stuff. If you get offended, I think you're at the wrong party. But whatever. Arguably, the single greatest example of the shallowness, of the dopamine chasing, of the darkness, of the world we live in, is the day that we're standing on right now, and I do not mean Chanukah. Xmas. Okay? You ask 10,000 people, non-Jewish people, what they are celebrating on Xmas. They will either not know, or they will tell you it is Yashka, I'm going to refer to him as Yashka, his birthday. Okay? Now, how many people consider December 25th to be Yashka's birthday?
It's my birthday.
A grand total of 0 people. Let me just get my papers in order here to get you the accurate source. Right here. Not one date in the New Testament says that his birthday is December 25th. The earliest document is from 243 CE from Northern Africa, a document called Apostate Computus put his birthday as March 28th. The Bishop Clemens of Alexandria put his date in 215 as November 18th. A different person by the name of Fitzmyer put his date as September 3rd BCE. Not one person claims that his birthday is December 25th. So how did his birthday become December 25th? Okay, so let's go back in time. There was a Roman holiday called Saturnalia, which was celebrated every year from December 17th to December 25th. What was this holiday of Saturnalia? Well, it was a celebration of Saturn. Now, how did they celebrate Saturn? Oh, well, it was essentially a drunken party where you run through the streets and do what your heart desires. But don't believe me. Here is a quote from the Greek historian Lucian, who writes, "The holiday Saturnalia was the celebration of the human body and its pleasures, and it culminated on December 25th, where there were mass drunken parties in which human-shaped biscuits were eaten to signify the worship of the human body, and slaves of the state were forced to give presents to the citizens of the city. Additionally, the day culminated with a large feast in which each town would vote on that year's public enemy number 1, and that person would be hunted down and tortured and killed to the glee of the onlookers." Okay, now, Christians convinced Rome to adopt Christianity. And the Romans are like, well, what about Saturnalia? They're like, no problem, just celebrate it on December 25th as the birth of Yashka. Made no sense, right? Who cares? Now came along a pagan group called the Asherah group, who lived in modern-day Germany. And the Christians said, you want to join Christianity? Or we'll kill you, but you have to, but we'll kill you, but you want to, but we'll kill you? And they said, sure, but we worship trees. How does that fit in? No problem. December 25th, we already hijacked Saturnalia, a day where we worship the body and eat human-shaped biscuits. Stick a tree in your house. Oh, geweldig. Then, there was a pagan group that believed that an old man who lived in Turkey and died in Italy named Nicholas was the scary old man who flew across the sky and beat up kids and made them whip them into shape, okay? So the Christians came and said, you want to join Christianity? We'll kill you if you don't, but please do. And they said, well, we have this guy that we worship. His name is Santa Claus, and he's old. Well, what's going to be with him? Oh, no problem. Just shove him in. He'll be part of it. Okay, so the old, scary, frail guy was kind of unattractive to a lot of people because who likes old, frail, annoying guys who are whipping kids into shape? So, a newspaper, a magazine called Harper's Weekly had a cartoonist named Thomas Nast who made him, instead of an old guy from Turkey, because that's a scary place, he now is coming from the North Pole, and he had reindeer. Okay, it gets even crazier. Coca-Cola in 1931 has sales plummeting. Why? Because cocaine used to be involved in Coke, and it was removed. It was banned. So they replaced it with caffeine. Nobody likes caffeine as much as they do cocaine. So sales are plummeting. So what do? Oh, so they hire a guy, a Swedish commercial artist named Hayden Sundblom, who uses his friend Lou Prentice as a model, and a new marketing campaign comes to fruition. And what is it? Santa Claus, who was originally an old scary man from Turkey, who became an old man from the North Pole, now is a large, jolly man wearing red, drinking Coke. Okay, there we have it. The holiest day of the non-Jewish year, which, by the way, is a celebration of the Jewish people being irrelevant, right? Because let's say the obvious out loud here. Yashka's birth is the death of us. We became irrelevant when Yashka was born, according to them. Right? There are millions of people, in fact, 2.83 billion people right now celebrating the Jewish people being irrelevant. That's what Xmas is a celebration of. I do not trust anybody who tells you otherwise. It's a hodgepodge of nothingness, of shallowness. And of course, Coca-Cola somehow figures out a way to make money out of it. That is the world we're living in. We light a candle because we have depth. We have homes filled with light. We have homes filled with meaning. We have homes filled with the purest, holiest, sweetest children on earth. I want to end with one more thing. The single greatest composer of all time was a man named Ludwig van Beethoven, according to every metric. The best. He has the most famous compositions. His music is played in the most famous venues. Now here's what's most interesting about Beethoven. Beethoven was deaf. He could not hear. Beethoven was living in Vienna. In his late teens, early 20s, he lost his ability to hear completely. And he was crushed. So he moved to a shack in the Austrian mountains, and he was immensely suicidal. Well, what good is the musician, is a composer that can't hear? Years go by, and he drags himself to his piano. And he starts playing, and he makes a composition, and he makes another composition, and then he makes another composition. And from those compositions, not only came his most famous works, came the single most famous pieces of music ever. The standard music taught in music schools are from those compositions. How could it possibly be? How could a person who's deaf make such brilliant music? The answer is that before he was deaf, his ears were making his music, and his ears were contaminated by the mediocrity, by the peanut gallery, by the way other people did it. But he went deaf, and suddenly he's making music with his soul. He's making music with his mind, uncontaminated music, and from that music came the single greatest music on earth. The Jewish people are the greatest composers of spiritual music on earth. You know why? Because we're deaf. Because we can close the door and light one candle. I don't need tons of stuff. I don't need externalities. I don't need dopamine. We sang 1,000 years ago. We sang 500 years ago. We sang 5 years ago. We sing today. We'll sing tomorrow. We'll sing in the Beis HaMikdash. We'll sing in gas chambers. We'll sing in ghettos. We'll sing in the face of pogrommers. We'll sing anywhere. Do you want to know our secret? Because we're deaf! Because we can close the door! Because we have walls that say, I am uninterested in the dopamine. I don't need your latest trends of dopamine for my happiness. My happiness is innate. My happiness is in my soul. And that bothers lots of people. But we don't care. We keep on keeping on. Every single person in this room is a grandchild of someone who had to look into the faces of Egyptians, or Babylonians, or philosophers, or enlighteners, or celebrities, or politicians who are 6'7", such good-looking people. Man, I wish I could be like them. And you know what they said? They said, I will not give up my soul for you. I will not trade my soul for a bowl of lentil soup like Asaph did. They looked into the faces of enemies that wanted desperately for our soul to dissipate. And they said, I will not give in. I will not give up. May our grandchildren be grandchildren of people who are able to look into the face of Americanism and say, I will not give in. Because the single greatest threat to the Jewish people is not terrorists. It's not people spraying swastikas. It's assimilation. It's people who do not appreciate the beauty of the Jewish home, of the fact that the Jewish home is the single greatest entity on earth. If we can have grandchildren of people who looked into the faces of billboards, of YouTubers, and said, I will not sell my soul to you, we will join the ranks of Jews throughout history who are called generals in the army of God, and we will live lives with the happiest, most light-filled homes on earth, and no one will ever convince us otherwise. I thank you very much for listening.